Hello, how's it going? My name is Andrew Robinson, and I made this here Guitar Hero MIDI Wiimote controller thing, and it like makes sound when I do this. Or this. And I can change octaves. And I get a whole bunch of like note patterns. And like feedback and like delay and like reverb, and it's all cool. And if you're like wondering how the heck I'm doing this, you've come to the right video. First things first, the fact that it's a Wiimote is like super important because I can connect it to my computer and program it to do different things through this cool stuff called OSC, which stands for Open Sound and Control, and it's a protocol of like computers to do programming. So first, I found this cool software program called Osculator, which helps my Wiimote be right into my computer to do reprogramming stuff. And it's super helpful, and I bought the licensing. Highly recommend if you want to do something like this. Shout out to the people who made this. And you see there's like this list of things, Wii 1 button minus Wii 1 button 2. These are all the OSC messages in that my computer picks up and understands. And then over here in my Max patch, as you see, I am receiving these OSC messages. That is what the UDP receive in Max MSP does, in case you are a Max programmer like myself. And you can use ORoute or route. Like there's a lot of different ways you could parse out these OSC messages, and you see that is exactly what I'm doing in this patch. It says -Wii -1 -guitar, so that gives me the Wii controller, the first Wii controller, and it's the Guitar Hero Wii controller. And then I can get the keys, which are the buttons, so when I press the buttons, these toggles light up, and I can get the strum bar, and that's what lights up these toggles. And all of these control MIDI messages in this patch. I'm basically just taking these button presses and triggering them to do MIDI messages in a certain way. The main thing you'll see here is that with these MIDI messages, I'm using the make note and note out combo to make them into MIDI messages. And if I double click this, you see it says from Max 2. That's super important because that then sends the MIDI message out as a MIDI message into Ableton. The crossover between Max MSP and Ableton is insane, and if you are a sound designer, man, this is the best, quite honestly, for lack of a more proper term. It is so cool what you can do between Max and Ableton, and one of those things is send MIDI messages directly in. And you see right here, I am pulling the MIDI from the Max 1 and from Max 2. It's both the keys on the guitar and the touchpad, and they read into Ableton as MIDI notes. So it's basically just triggering a note in Ableton. If you know Ableton, it's like you just put one note there, and then you can, add all of Ableton's effects and stuff in, and they just read on different channels. And the thing that I think personally is super cool about this is you hear the sound of the guitar. That's all being done with the sound design in Ableton. And if I ever get bored of that, I can just make a new Ableton session and completely redesign the sound of the guitar without changing anything about the guitar itself. So then the last thing to consider with this Guitar Hero controller is literally how it's played as a Guitar Hero controller. And so I wanted to make it as similar to trying to play the real guitar as possible, but you still have to work within the limitations of it being a Guitar Hero controller. So I started with the lowest note being equal to the lowest note on the guitar, and there's a single note mode on the Guitar Hero controller that I programmed into it that lets you just play single notes. That's arpeggio mode. This is single note mode. And you can just strum up and down to play that note, and then each note goes up in the scale. So it's, and then from there, I wanted to add more octaves to it, because if we have more octaves, we get more notes out of just these 5 buttons. So the joystick down here goes up the octave, and now we can get more notes out of these buttons, and we can just keep going up. And that adds a lot more playability into the instrument, even though we're limited to just these 5 buttons to start with. By having these notes change up and down octaves, that adds so many more note choices into this instrument that we can then get like creative with musically without still needing to know actually how to play a real guitar, because the scales and all that music theory is built into it. And then I took that one step further with these buttons, which you don't have to strum to play. It's like tapping on and off, and it's built to the same notes and same scale, but it has a different tonality. So that is really interesting, because then we can start to get some contrast between doing this and doing this. And that adds so much more music creativity into it, because these are just played in different ways. No strumming, you can just tap. You get to do a lot more free stuff than you can do like that. And then taking it even one step further, to make the most musically complex and interesting things possible that I could think of, I added an arpeggio mode into this. So if you press the bridge button of the Guitar Hero controller and then you hold down the note and strum, it starts going off on arpeggio riffs, and you don't even have to hold the button down at that point. You can just hold the strum bar, and with that, each arpeggio is built to a scale, while still you can go up the scale of each button. So that's really interesting musically, because then you start to get tension between notes that are in different scales, because it's running up the arpeggiator scale, but it's also going up the scale built into these buttons, and that adds a lot of tension, which is also very interesting musically and like necessary to get like a full range of musical emotions. And then it lets me also do some fun stuff where I can just like hold these buttons down, strum, and I'll let that go for a while, maybe change octaves up, and then go. So it's super fun, and anybody can play this if you can play Guitar Hero. It's the same dynamic. Yeah.